Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we talk about a company that's having a social impact in the energy bar business. Welcome back, advanced listeners. Today is December 7th, and you're joining us for the second day of our business article. You can find the article we're going to discuss today on page 17 of your Advanced Studio Classroom magazine. I'm your host for today. My name is Simon, and I'm joined in the studio today by two panelists. We're glad to have you back, Rebecca.
Happy to be here.
Are you a big fan of energy bars?
Well, energy bars are great. I think we need to talk about what is an energy bar
It's a great idea. Tell us, what is an energy bar?
So energy bars, you have this idea of gaining energy. It's supposed to be very healthy, give you all the nutrients you need. And this was it started originally for astronauts, getting astronauts energy and all of this. And then later it became marketed for bodybuilders, people who do hiking, and it usually has lots of nuts and different things in it.
Listeners, this, by the way, this person you have been listening to is our second panelist today, Joe. Welcome back very quickly.
I'm Joe, and I love energy bars, actually.
It's okay, I'll be honest. The definition you guys have given, well, very true and very meaningful, still has me a bit confused. This is one of those terms. People tend to know what it is, but it's very, very hard to define because what you've sort of said sounds to me like a chocolate bar. Which is, so it's something that has energy and maybe a bunch of sugar and some nuts and some other things like that. So, really, what is the difference, I guess, between a chocolate bar and an energy bar?
Well, theoretically, the energy bar is supposed to be healthy, and then the chocolate bar is just chocolate and sugar.
Okay, but in reality...
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of different kinds of energy bars, but some energy bars have way too much sugar. They might have a lot of healthy stuff like nuts and granola and oats, but often they put way too much sugar. So always check the package first.
So the idea is an energy bar is going to be a healthier kind of snack that helps you get energy when you need it.
Yes.
But whether or not that's just a marketing thing or a real thing depends on the company and the bar. Despite that, energy bars have become a very popular thing in Western countries, especially energy bars that have things like organic ingredients and special things like that have become more and more popular. And in today's article, we're looking at a company called T-Squares. And the title actually says how T-Squares, a food startup, grew from an idea to soon selling in 187 Jewel Osco stores. So it's an energy bar company called T-Squares that started up and then grew from this idea to being a fairly successful little company. And so that is what we're going to look at today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's begin with our first reading. We can get into it. Listeners, you can join us at the top left-hand column on page 17 of your Advanced magazine, and we'll begin the reading now.
How T-Squares, a food startup, grew from an idea to soon selling in 187 Jewel Osco stores. T-Squares will begin selling its tea-infused energy bars in all 187 Chicago area Jewel Osco stores later this year. A significant milestone in a challenging journey for the South Side food startup. Tucked away in a nondescript brick building, T-Squares hopes to be a force for positive change in a community with high poverty and unemployment. It also aims to be a thriving food company in an expanding snack bar category. Realizing the dream of both financial success and social impact is an arduous day-to-day learning process, as founders Jordan Buckner and Isaac Lozano will attest. Like other startup entrepreneurs, Buckner and Lozano have had to learn on the fly how to manage the ebbs and flows of growing a business to meet increasing demand.
Okay, and so our reading today starts by introducing us a little bit to this company, T-Squares, and what they are going to do. It says T-Squares will begin selling its tea-infused energy bars in all 187 Chicago area Jewel Osco stores later this year. Okay, so will begin selling. This company is not yet selling its bars in these stores. But the bars themselves are tea-infused energy bars. Let's talk about that for a second. What on earth is a tea-infused bar?
Well, the bar has tea in it. They
Okay.
put tea leaves in the bar.
So it's kind of like, if you have a tea-flavored mooncake, right?
Yes.
Or something like that, tea-flavored cookies, things like that, tea infused into it. So this word infused really just means put in?
Right. And this particular company, if you go on their website, they'll tell you all about their organic tea leaves. And really their goal is to have a slightly caffeinated energy bar.
Oh, interesting. So it gives you a little jolt of energy.
Right. So it's less about the flavor and more about the caffeine.
Okay. And they're basically planning to put their bars in these 187 Chicago area Jewel Osco stores. Does either of you know anything about this company, Jewel Osco?
It's just a supermarket chain.
Okay, but it's
a
fairly
popular
big.
supermarket chain in Chicago area.
Okay, and of course, this company, T-Squares, is also from the Chicago area. They tell us later on in this section that it's from the south side of Chicago. That's the term they use, the South Side Food Startup. And so what is the south side of Chicago known for?
It's the poorer area of Chicago. It's the area where President Obama, when he was a young man, he was just starting out, he worked in the South Side for a while.
Okay, and so basically getting into these grocery stores, are they lower end or higher end stores?
I think they're pretty much right in the middle. They're not, later on we talk about Whole Foods. They're not quite up at Whole Foods territory, but they're not like a lower end
Whole
grocery
Foods, of
store.
course, is a chain where you go to buy organic things and sort of expensive imported kinds of foods. And so this is just a big supermarket chain. And so it says this is a significant milestone, so an important achievement for the company. And they've had a challenging journey, maybe because of their origins coming out of this south side of Chicago where things are not always smooth and easy. Okay, and so getting into the next paragraph, it tells us a little bit about where the company is located. They say they're tucked away in a nondescript brick building. So when you're tucked away, it means you're kind of hidden. What exactly is a nondescript building?
Right. So a nondescript building is just very plain, ordinary. It doesn't look particularly special.
Okay, so the outside of this company doesn't look particularly special, but the company itself hopes to be special, to do something special. It tells us that T-Squares hopes to be a force for positive change in a community with high poverty and unemployment. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Rebecca, about the south side of Chicago being a poorer area. So this is a company that also has a social goal. They want to help improve the community that they are in. And it tells us they want to do that by aiming to be a thriving food company in the expanding snack bar category. Now, that's another term there, snack bar. What is a snack bar?
Now, we've had energy bars, candy bars, snack bars.
Oh, chocolate bars was the
Chocolate
term
bars.
I used. You just called them candy bars.
Oh, no, more bars.
It's probably because I'm Canadian. That was probably a Canadianism, the chocolate bar.
Oh, that's
Candy bar is pretty common in the U.S., you
pretty
say?
common.
Okay, so candy bars and chocolate bars are the same thing.
Same. Right. Think of like Snickers.
Energy bars are things you might use maybe when you're going hiking because you want a lot of energy. Maybe you're playing sports. So what now is a snack bar?
So a snack bar is a broader category of bars, and it's usually, they're healthy. They'll have nuts, oats, but they're not necessarily going to add things to boost your energy, or they're not going to add a lot of whey protein for kind of muscle building. So one particular example is I really love Cliff Bars, and that's a type of snack bar.
See, I would have said, if you'd asked me which my favorite energy bar was, I would have said Cliff Bar.
That's what I would have said initially as well.
Okay, so are these real distinctions, or are these terms just kind of really broad?
I think they're pretty broad, except for the original energy bar, which was Power Bar
Yeah, Power Bar.
from the
bodybuilding.
1980s.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, rock climbers and people like that really use them. They tasted terrible.
But they still taste terrible.
They still. So hopefully snack bars taste a little bit better. The idea is they're kind of marketing them to be a healthier alternative, though. But of course, snack bar can have a different meaning. If you're on a ship, for example, maybe a ferry going somewhere, you might drop by the snack bar, and that's a different thing. That's a place. What would a snack bar be then?
Well, they have coffee, they have muffins, they have some snacks you can buy, potato chips maybe.
Yeah, it's like a little store where they serve snacks. And so here when we say snack bar, we're actually talking about these energy bars or chocolate bars or power bars or different kinds of bars again. So that is an industry that is expanding, and that's the industry T-Squares wants to be working in. And so they are trying to realize a couple of different goals. Other than just becoming a big player in this new industry, what else are they trying to do, Rebecca?
Well, they would like to have some social impact. Social impact is basically they want to make a difference in society. They want to make their society or their world a little bit better.
Okay, and they actually say that so realizing these two dreams is an arduous day-to-day learning process. What does that mean, Joe?
Well, arduous is just another word for saying it's difficult. It's a big challenge that they're going through, and it takes a lot of effort to achieve both their dreams of financial success and social impact.
And this, we go on to read, is attested to by both of the founders, Jordan Buckner and Isaac Lozano. And so when you attest to something, it just means you both say that this is true. You both have made this sort of statement that it's an arduous process, and probably that is because they are startup entrepreneurs. So anytime you're trying to figure out a new business and trying to make it work, it's going to be a big day-to-day learning process, right? Especially when you're trying to do two things at once. It tells us then in the second part of this paragraph that like other startup entrepreneurs, Buckner and Lozano have had to learn on the fly. That's an interesting term. What does that mean, Rebecca?
Well, it's basically in a very short period of time, you have to quickly learn something new. So you don't have a lot of time to prepare or to plan because things are changing every day. You just have to learn new things every day.
And what they've had to learn is how to manage the ebbs and flows of this business. Now, what do we mean by ebbs and flows?
So ebbs and flows just deals with, how in business things kind of go up and down, and dealing with kind of the changes that happen as you're a business trying to grow and meet demands.
Mm-hmm. And ebb and flow, actually, originally this term, it refers to tides in the ocean coming in and going out. And so the idea just being that the level of the water is changing all the time. The situation is changing all the time. And so basically what they're saying here is they've had to learn very quickly how to manage a company in a fast-changing environment. That's basically what this sentence means, right? Okay, and that brings us to our second reading for today. It's the section called Long-Term Goals, Strong Sales, and Social Impact. And my hope is that in this section, we're going to learn a little bit more about how they are planning to make a social impact through their T-Squares energy bars. Let's do that reading now.
Long-term goals, strong sales, and social impact. T-Squares is still wee, but rapidly growing. The company is projected to make about $500,000 in sales this year, more than 4 times what it made last year. Buckner, the company's 29-year-old CEO and vice president of innovation, said. T-Squares isn't yet profitable, but projects to get there by the end of the year, he said. Mindy Haig, an associate coordinator for Whole Foods Market, described T-Square's early success as a perfect storm of innovation in a growing product category, strong branding, and an eagerness to learn and improve. Both Buckner and Lozano stress that they hope to grow the company's social impact along with its sales. T-Squares is in the process of trying to establish a nonprofit to expand its work of educating and providing job opportunities for the surrounding underserved communities. The biggest thing has been making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains, said Lozano, 30, Vice President of Operations. Maybe we can't pay ourselves what we wanted to for this quarter, but we know if we continue to hit these metrics that we set for ourselves, we'll be able to have that much more. And also, not ever forgetting that we're going to be reinvesting this excess that we make into our community.
Okay, so we do learn a little bit more here about what these two entrepreneurs are trying to do with their little company. We learn that T-Squares is still wee, but rapidly growing. When we say something is wee, what are we saying about it?
We're just saying that it's still small. It's still kind of a tiny startup.
Yeah, like tiny, right? Very, very small. And they go on to tell us that they throw some bigger numbers around, but really in the world of business, these are not very big numbers at all. They tell us that the company is projected to make about $500,000, that's US of course, in sales this year, and that is 4 times what it made last year. So the company is growing fairly quickly. But, of course, the company is not yet profitable. It just hopes to be profitable by the end of this year. This paragraph also tells us a little bit about the founders. Tell us about our founders and how old they are.
So one of the founders, Buckner, he is 29 years old and is the vice president of innovation.
Okay. And
we also have Lozano, and Lozano is just a year older, 30, and is vice president of operations. So these are 2 young guys, and actually you can read about their story because actually they're just friends, and one of them is working in an office and noticed that their snack bar in their office was just like potato chips, chocolate bars, these sorts of things. And so he wanted to develop a tea-infused energy bar to get him through his work days, and that turned into a startup.
So sort of the necessity of the situation led to the creation of this company.
That's right.
And so we see there by the numbers that the company is small, but it's growing fairly quickly. And then we hear from Mendy Haig, who's the Associate Coordinator for Whole Foods Market. And she describes their products, or actually their experience as a company, as a perfect storm of innovation in the growing product category. What exactly is a perfect storm of innovation, Rebecca?
This is actually a very interesting use of the perfect storm, because a perfect storm is basically a storm that happens because there's certain special factors. Many different factors have to come together, and those factors are usually very rare to have all those factors come together, and it creates a very big storm. So usually a perfect storm is talking about things that are more negative, like in like natural disasters. But here is used in a good way. Here is a perfect storm of innovation. It means they have certain elements that, when put together, make this company very successful.
So when we talk about a storm here, you mentioned that this use of a perfect storm is positive, but can you give me an example of what kinds of things they're describing as a storm for this business?
So things that they're describing as their storm is the innovation,
Okay.
strong branding, and their eagerness. So these 3 things together creates that perfect storm.
Okay, and so they've got a good idea, right? And then they have some good branding, and they're wanting to develop this well, but maybe you could also add that it's a growing product category. So in a sense, what that means is they're kind of in the right place at the right time. They have a good idea for an energy bar and a good brand for that energy bar at a time when people really want more energy bars. They're becoming more and more popular, right? And so the result is that rather than growing very slowly over many, many years and having to introduce people to the idea of what an energy bar is, et cetera, people know and they're looking for more variety, and so people are willing to maybe try this new product.
Right. And I imagine for a startup that this can actually be a big challenge, going from small company not selling a lot to all of a sudden expanding very rapidly.
But to this point, basically what we're talking about here is the growth of their company. We're not hearing very much about this social impact that they wanted to have, because really they had two goals, right? One was to develop the financial side of the business. The other one was to have a social impact on that south side of Chicago, the community they were in. And so it tells us in the next paragraph that both of the founders stressed that they hope to grow the company's social impact along with sales. So what are they doing about that, Rebecca?
Well, they've actually established, here in the article, they were in the process of trying to establish a nonprofit. But if you read up more about their recent news, they have established a nonprofit to provide training opportunities for young people. And basically, this is job training, like in different areas like sales and marketing and business development. So young people can come intern or work for short periods of time in their company to learn these business skills that they can either, if they're very, very good, perhaps the company will keep them. They can continue to work for this company, or they can go start their own businesses.
Okay, you sound like you've done some research on this nonprofit. Is the nonprofit a separate thing from the company?
Well, it really depends on how they set up the nonprofit. Usually a nonprofit is separate from the company because the biggest difference is in taxes. The government does not take so much taxes from nonprofits.
Okay, so sometimes you hear a term that people in North America use. They call an organization a social enterprise. And usually what they mean by that is it's a company that sort of takes part of its profit to do something social. Would it be fair to describe this T Squares as a social enterprise?
I think so. I think this company can be described as a social enterprise, but whether their arm in doing the nonprofit work is part of the company or is it run as a separate organization really depends on how they want to structure it. And it usually comes down to tax purposes. Does it make more sense to keep it together or do they do it separately?
But either way, they're hoping to provide some training and job opportunities for their surrounding underserved community. Now, I know what an underdeveloped community is, right? Like a poor community. What do we mean by an underserved community, Joe?
Underserved community could probably refer to the idea that they don't have a lot of services or the school learning opportunities in that area are a little bit weaker. So you notice here the things that they're expanding are education and job opportunities.
So does that mean there aren't schools in these communities, or does it mean the schools just aren't very good in these communities? What do we really mean by
So here
this?
It would be referring to the fact that there are schools, but they're not very strong.
Okay. And the same is then true for job opportunities, meaning there's maybe not a lot of good job opportunities? Is that the idea?
Now, that one is a little bit different. For job opportunities, it's quite possible that there just aren't as many job opportunities in that area.
Okay, but that kind of goes away from underserved and into like underdeveloped, right? Because underserved, I guess the root word there is service. And the idea being that public services are not very good or not easy to get or not everywhere in the area. And so they're looking to make up for that shortfall, I guess. And we go into our last paragraph and we hear a quote from Lozano, one of the founders. And this, of course, is how you knew he was 30, Joe, when I asked you to tell me about the founders.
I
It tells
looked
us
ahead.
Here. That's right. He says, the biggest thing has been making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. Maybe we can pay ourselves what we wanted to for this quarter, but we know if we continue to hit these metrics that we set for ourselves, we'll be able to have that much more, and also not ever forgetting that we're going to be reinvesting this excess that we make into our community. That is an incredibly long sentence.
It's very long, and it's a good soundbite for what they're doing right now.
So let's break it up here. The biggest thing has been making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. What kinds of short-term sacrifices might they be making, Rebecca?
Well, I think the first thing is they're getting a much lower salary than if they were working in a big company. Because for a lot of startups, of course, you don't have a lot of money right in the beginning. So you probably can't pay your employees that well. And if you're working in a startup, you're probably working maybe 20 hours a day, and that's very normal. You have to work very long hours on very little pay.
20
Okay.
hours a day. So 4 hours of
Maybe not quite 20, but you probably will have to put in more hours than if you were in a big company.
Yeah, I've heard that's
Yeah.
the case. Startups are very difficult in the beginning, and then they kind of get more cush as you develop.
What? Wait,
And
cush?
especially
What do you
these are
mean
the
They get
owners.
more cush. What are you talking about?
Well, I think of like cushions, right? Isn't that? I think that's the term that we talk
well,
about.
you're referring to the term cushy.
Cush.
Like when we say something is cushy, we mean like it's a really good deal, lots of great benefits, lots of good money, right? So
That's right.
Joe, you're such an informal speaker. I don't
I
know. It's hard to
know.
keep up with you sometimes. Okay, and so as we continue on with this sense, he basically refers to this idea of lower salary. He says, maybe we can't pay ourselves what we wanted for this quarter, meaning like you wanted to earn so much money, but you couldn't pay yourself that much because if you did, you'd be taking money out of the company that the company sort of needed. So that's okay, though, he says, because we know if we continue to hit these metrics. Okay, what are these metrics we're talking about?
Well, these are basically number goals that they have set. Perhaps they have set like by a certain point of time, by like December of this year, how much sales should I make? How much profit should I make? So metrics are basically just numbers.
Okay, so the idea being he might not be getting paid as much as he would like now, but if the company continues to hit its goals, then he says here, we'll be able to have that much more. So you'll actually be much more successful later because you're taking the sacrifice now. That's the idea, right? But then he adds something at the end. He says, and also not ever forgetting that we're going to be reinvesting this excess that we make into our community. So what's he mean by that, Joe?
So that means the additional profits that the company makes goes back into the community. And the reminder here is that they should never forget. So once they get really big, they shouldn't lose that social impact goal.
Well, that is a positive business story, isn't it? An interesting idea. Listeners, go ahead and take the opportunity to try an energy bar. You might let us know on our social media how you feel about the energy bar. You could even send us a letter at letters@studioclassroom.com and let us know how you feel about today's program. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for the third day of our December business article. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.